Hey, we're live, Michael. We're live. This is our first
What's
live
up?
stream on Fearless Photography,
I
guys.
know. I
The
know.
first
I'm glad.
ever.
First ever.
It's
Hopefully
big time.
first of many though. We have others coming.
Yes. And we gotta.
Oh,
Hey, I gotta ask, CA Human, can I mod you? Would you mod for us? I just wanna. Feel free to answer that
oh.
question. Oh well, here Ada. I'll just mod Ada. Ada'll be a good mod here. But why can't I get to this? Ticks me off sometimes, Michael. I get this this whole thing with my. Anyways, all right. Well, folks, welcome. This is our first live for Fearless Photography, guys, and we're excited to be with you. And we're gonna share some great information with you. Here, I'm gonna mod two people here, just so I can get this done. Why? Oh, because I'm not logged in the right. I'm sorry, Michael. Michael, why don't you start with it? I'm gonna get a couple people modded here, just so we have some mods.
All right. So we're really glad to be here. We're excited. We're going to go over several things here. If you're a newbie to photography, I think you're going to get some good information here tonight. We're going to be going over starter cameras, exposure triangle, a lot of different ISO, a lot of different things that will help you get started with just taking your camera and putting it to good use.
Yeah, so folks, I mean, it can be confusing. I mean, like, so a lot of times you get there we go. You get the situation where there's so much. A camera today is a high-tech computer, and I'm not kidding. It can do so much. Please smash that like as you're coming in to try and get the distribution of this out a little bit. But seriously, it is a really fancy. And I'm gonna go grab a camera. I got a camera right back here in my camera bag. I got a few up here right now. I'm going to grab one right now to show you a few things. So this is my, okay, this is a great camera to start with. Well, this thing's always
Which one you got there?
Yeah, so this is the Nikon D7500. Now, Michael, you shoot Sony, and then
mostly
you also
Sony.
have mostly Sony, but you also have what is it? Not a Pentax. What's the other one you shoot?
I have a Panasonic. I have a Canon. This is my Canon 80D here, but mostly Sony. Yeah,
mostly Sony.
Yeah.
And the thing is, folks, what I don't want you to get hung up on brand. Please don't do that. I mean that in all sincerity. The cameras today are so good. Okay, now I had a little issue with Sony early on because the white balance was wonky, but they fixed that, right, Michael? I mean,
they certainly. Yeah, they fixed it. Right now I'm on Sony, and so we used to have issues. Sony used to have issues, and that was before I actually got one with white balance where you get a little bit of the yellow tint. I think that's what you dealt with, Neil. Was that what you're speaking to?
Yes, I dealt with some yellow tint. Absolutely.
Yeah. But since then, they've done a good job of fixing their color science, and it's always debatable with brands. I mean, you get a wide range of things, but Sony's definitely taken their game up quite a bit since back when you were dealing with them.
Yeah. So I shoot Nikon just because that's what I got into, folks. Now, and this camera has a Tokina lens, and I picked up this camera specifically because of a couple things. One is this is a D7500. It's a more affordable camera, but then also the Tokina makes great lenses, folks. You don't have to buy the Nikon branded lenses. Now, I have a lot of those, but what I don't want you to do is separate yourself from doing this because of money. In fact, I have a good friend, and I was encouraging him to start a YouTube channel, and he kept telling, I need a camera. And I said, you know what? For what you're doing, just start with your phone. Okay, just start with your phone. And the phones today can do really amazing jobs at taking pictures, and you can get actually RAW apps for taking photos with an iPhone. You can shoot it in RAW. And for those who don't know what RAW is, that's just the raw image data. And so, a JPEG is a compressed image. You will not be able to edit that as well. But if you get the raw image, oh, it's amazing. It really is. And we will do a separate program on editing to show you that. But it is amazing how well RAW works to edit from.
Absolutely. Gives you a lot more to work with in post.
Oh, yeah.
Whole lot more.
a ton more. It will not, you know, like your highlights won't go wonky on you so fast. Okay. So,
Right.
yeah, anyhow, but, and so Michael, you know, you kind of got the order here. So,
Yeah.
you know,
So
Michael's an orderly guy.
I
kind of
am an
bounce
orderly guy.
around a little bit more, but so I'm going to let him lead, and I'm just going to pick up with him and where he's going.
Yeah. I'm over here sweating. It's like 109 degrees in California in Bakersfield, and man, it's been that way for a week. How is it over where you're at? Yeah. What are you guys looking at?
It was absolutely gorgeous. So I did an art show with the photography in Brookings, South Dakota, and it rained. It was torrential rain, so it was terrible on Saturday morning till about 2:00. But then it got really nice, and Sunday was absolutely gorgeous. You know, like probably 20% relative humidity, 80 degrees, slight breeze. It was gorgeous, Michael. So we got it better here than you do.
Oh
there.
Man, yeah, it's ridiculous. Yeah. So the first thing we can get into, well, two things. The humidity is like 12%. So we have that going for us.
Oh, and it's all burning. But anyhow,
and the lack of mosquitoes. I will not complain about that for sure compared to, man,
good idea.
It was crazy when we were out there. Crazy. So let's get started with just talking about starter cameras.
Yes.
Where do you start? And personally, I already brought mine out here, and this is the camera. I mean, I started with actually a camera at my church that they already had. But as far as my first camera, I started with the Canon 80D, and that's kind of a mid-range camera. You definitely don't have to even start there. If you're looking to just get started, you can find something relatively inexpensive. But the one thing that I would say, my advice would be to make sure it has is a removable lens. So you can put on different lenses. You want to at least have the removable lens. So one that I always see is that like the Canon Rebel T series. I don't know if you've ever looked into that at all, Neil. Ever seen anything on that?
They make a good camera. You know, like I said, they all make good cameras. So Canon Rebels, it's affordable. It is a DSLR. You know, you can swap out the lenses on it.
Yep.
You know, if we're looking kind of similar in Nikon, you're looking like a D5300.
Right.
I had a friend who actually, I have a friend, he won the Forged in Fire Championship, Michael. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I told you this.
No, but no, you never told me this.
He won the Forged in Fire Championship. His name is Cody Hofsummer. He lives up here in Aurora, Minnesota.
Okay.
And so he has all these beautiful knives. In fact, I could go get my Hofsummer knife just to show y'all because it's so fantastic, but I'll keep moving here. But it's he needs to take pictures of his knives to sell them. So what I did was I told him get the D5300, and then I showed him the settings on it and how to utilize that and how to edit. So he got a whole kit with like 2 lenses. I think $500, folks. I mean, that's new on sale. Yeah. You can buy this stuff sometimes used. I got my first for $250 with a lens and everything. So I just want to encourage you folks that you don't need to spend a lot. And all these newer cameras, all these DSLRs will take video. So the D5300, the Canon Rebel's a good choice. You know, there's a lot of options. This is a D7500 here, which right now you could pick up a D7500 for about $700 refurbished or used or whatnot. So starting out with a camera, you don't have to spend a lot. I just want to get that.
Exactly. That's about the same range the Canon 80D's at. It was originally like $1,200, but that's years ago now. So that's come down. I think the Rebel series, you can get something decent with a lens, like you were saying. I think it's about $450. So, I mean, and if you're just starting off, you're gonna be good with that. You can get in and mess with the exposure. You can play around and get creative with it. Again, as long as it's something that has that removable lens, you're gonna be good to go to get a great start with photography.
So Scott here, he uses the Rebel T8i.
Okay.
He said that works really well for astrophotography, so it must have a really good high ISO range. I have done some astrophotography with this 7500, and modern cameras today, folks. So for those who have seen like the pictures of the stars, and you go like, well, I really think that's cool. We did a video on that too just a little bit ago, but shoot the stars. But the ISO ranges on these cameras, you can shoot these things at 3200, 4000 ISO, and there's a little bit of grain, but they don't look too bad. If you want to go really crazy for low light, your Sony is amazing at that, Michael. And so are my Nikon Z6s, which I'll grab one here.
Yeah, the Sony for low light. I got that for the reason I purchased that is I was using the Canon 80D, and then I started getting wedding gigs, and you know, weddings have receptions that are usually pretty low light. And I was shopping around, what do I need to be able to make this work? I don't want it to be super grainy every time I shoot a wedding. So yeah, I got the Sony A7 III, which, man, low light monster. It's awesome. You can push it really far without getting grain, and if you're low light, this is great.
So, and I've got the Nikon Z6, which would be kind of a counterpart to that. Again, low light. This is what's called it's not a DSLR. These are mirrorless cameras, as is the Sony. But they're really phenomenal in low light. This is a great video camera. It's that, well, for my videography, this is my go-to camera. The Z6. So
yeah, you're always sending me stuff off of the Z6, and it's great stuff.
Yes. So now let's talk about some of the basic settings, because I really want to encourage you folks not to shoot in manual. Yes. And I want you to know that it's not that difficult to, I guess, do a good job. And, you know, it's not as hard as people think shooting in manual. Okay.
Yes. Do you want to kick that off with, you want to go over the exposure triangle to kick that part off?
Let's do the exposure triangle. Okay. So
I'm going to send you something here. So just to share once we get into that a little bit. Let me screen share. And you don't have to separate away, but we'll get that in there. Okay. So yeah, go ahead.
Do you want me to share this screen here?
I'll get to it in just a second. Okay. So, so my personal take. So when I started the exposure triangle, you know, aperture, ISO, shutter speed, I remember I was starting with it and I was like, man, this seems complicated. And I have a wedding to shoot like tomorrow. And I want to know this because I know it's going to make me so much better, but I don't. So I shot in auto, and we're going to.
Whoa!
Yes. And we're going to take a stand against auto, but that's what I had to do because I didn't want to mess up their wedding stuff. So, but I believe learning the exposure triangle, it's really what's going to give you creative control over your visual storytelling, learning that piece. Typically, when people talk about the exposure triangle, you think of things like my photos are too dark or my photos are too bright. But it's even more than that. It's actually like it has to do with the noise of the photos. It has to do with the blurriness, the crispiness, or maybe you want it crispy over here but blurry over there. And that all has to do with what you're doing with the exposure triangle. So I've heard it kind of said like, you know, great coffee or great tea is the right balance between three different components or three different things. You need water for great coffee. You need the coffee grounds. But if you just have the water and the coffee grounds, that's still not enough. You also need time. You need to work with time. And with photos, we need a great balance of three things as well. And that's ISO, which is how sensitive your camera is to light. So it's like your eyes in a movie theater. And then you step outside into the bright, super bright light, and it takes a second to adjust, and vice versa. That's kind of how ISO is. So we need ISO, we need aperture, and shutter speed. Those are the three ingredients of the exposure triangle. And then when we get those pieces right, it makes a world of difference in our ability to shoot creatively with all those things when it comes to depth of field, when it comes to how bright or the proper exposure, and really anything we're trying to do creatively with our photography. So just to define those really quick, I already did it with ISO. It's how sensitive your camera is to light. Aperture, it refers to the opening in the lens's diaphragm, how much light it lets through. And then shutter speed's a measurement of how much time the shutter stays open. So you might want to, you can throw up that picture if you want for aperture there. It kind of just gives a, yeah. So we have here, you can kind of see, or this is ISO. So you can see the ISO, you know, if you're low ISO, and that is just a diagram of how, you know, you bump the ISO and it gets brighter, but that's nice. But then you also you get more light, but if you bump it too far, you also get more grain. So it's a give and take with all of these things. So you see there at the low. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, this is the thing, folks. It's like you're trying to let more light in, but then it's introducing grain if you're dealing with ISO. There's other ways to let more light in. but then you're going to give up something there. So each time you do this, but sometimes what you're giving up actually adds to the effect, like in aperture, which is one we're going to cover here in just a second. But you can see if I'm shooting a landscape photo, and Michael, I'm going to add to the stream here too. I'm going to just share another.
Yeah, great.
And I'm going to show you just a few of my photos here. Not this one. Oh, not that one. I added the wrong thing to the stream. Hold on. I'm sorry. We're going to go to remove this, stop, and then we're going to go. I thought it was that one, but it was here. I got to go to. Okay, here it is. So I'm going to show you. So this is, folks, this is Milky Way here, but I want to get to this. If I'm doing a landscape photo, right, a basic landscape photo, I want 100 ISO. I don't want any grain. Right. And I got a text here from a friend who's watching, and he said he had the Canon 80D, just FYI, and upgraded to the Canon R6. Said it was way better in low light. That R6 is a newer Canon, and very nice.
Absolutely.
But love your D850. I do shoot a D850. That was what this photo was shot on. This is on Lake Superior. But here's the thing: if I'm going to move down to 100 ISO on a morning, this is like right at sun. It's at sunrise, and I'm shooting into the light. I need to slow the shutter speed down. Now, actually, that creates a cool effect here because I can adjust but then by slowing the shutter speed down, that creates that cool effect with the water spill. So do you still see that? It just kind of blacked out on me. But anyways, so that's why I want to say. So that's the difference. I'm lowering the shutter speed. I was probably at like 1/20th of a second or something, or 1/15th of a second on shutter speed, so I could keep my ISO at 100. So, this grain problem didn't happen to me. But if I shot at ISO 100, it would have been too dark if I hadn't slowed that down. But see, so I'm trying to avoid the grain, so I've got a slower shutter speed, with a lower ISO. So
that shutter speeds, that's what gave you that effect on the water there.
It did, yeah. So that effect on the water came from the slower shutter speed. So I can tell you what my XF data was on this. XF is just your different settings in the camera, folks, for those who aren't familiar with that term. But it's just, we're looking at what I believe this one was it was either 1/15th or 1/20th of a second, which still sounds really fast, but I'm telling you, it's not, okay? And this was shot on the D850 with something like 1/15th shutter, 100 ISO, and my aperture was set at 10, okay? So that way I could pull the whole focal plane in, okay? But to that point, sometimes you want what's called bokeh. And here I'll show you another thing. This is my favorite picture from the other year, Michael. I gotta share it. So it's just what's gonna happen. I'm gonna share this one here. But this will be kind of cool, and you'll see. I'm kind of jumping ahead just a little bit. I want to just show you this because we're kind of into it here. So this is my son. Okay, he's got a monster fish, but if you look at the background, it's kind of blurred out. It's not real clear. Okay, so again, this was low light. This was later at night. So what I did was I pumped the ISO up on it. I shot this with the Z6. I had the ISO up to about 400. Okay, but I had my aperture set at only 4, and I was at 70 millimeters. So that allows me then to create that background that's kind of a milkier, softer background. And it really isolates Jacob and his fish there. That's all you're focused on at this point.
Yeah, it brings your eye. If you would have had that background there in complete focus, he would not be so dominant in that photo. Your eyes would be kind of led everywhere, and that really does a great job of pointing your eye right where you want it to go. That shot. Yeah.
So, and it's just a beautiful fish, and it's a good-looking kid. So you got a good subject to work with.
He's a great kid, by the way. He's a great guy.
He's a lot of fun, anyhow.
If you cut to that shot, I think it'll give people who are new to to aperture, kind of a visual of how it works. And that's how your lens opens up there. And you see the bigger the number, the lower amount of light that you're letting through. And that's what we've been talking about here. But sometimes visuals, at least, are good for me. I can kind of get an idea of what's happening.
It's great. I always explain this one. It's like drinking from a fire hose, drinking from a straw, right? The higher you go up on that f-stop or aperture number, okay, and with your camera, you have a basic command dial, okay? So when you turn on a camera, there's a command dial here in the back, a command dial here in the front, typically. That's how you're adjusting these things. So when I'm adjusting aperture, that's when I'm turning this front dial on my Nikon. How does that work on a Sony, Michael? Is that front or back command dial?
When I'm doing with video, I'm not really messing with that quite as much. The only time I do it, pull it out here. I have it right here.
And then this one back here is going to mess around with your shutter speed. So you probably can't see this. I'll have to pull that out of the stream here. But
so same on here. You have a dial on the back and on the front for aperture and shutter speed, and and it really just depends on how you set it. So this is the Sony, by the way, Sony A7 III.
So, but you can see that if you're at f16, you've got just like a pinhole, but then you go to f2.8, it's going to let in all that more light. But what you're giving up, folks, so this is the give and take. Every setting on a camera will allow you to gain something and lose something. Available light will come in when you're at f2.8, but it will also, which sometimes, again, going back to this is what you want here to make that background not in focus. But in the instance of that landscape photo that I showed you, you want it all in focus. So you got to stay on that f-stop down around f10, f12, something like that. So you're letting in less light so you can bring more into focus. Okay. So
exactly.
That's how aperture works. So this gives you a good visual example of this, so
Yep. And then with aperture and also shutter speed, it's always kind of a balance between the two, because they're both things that can either let in more light or let in less light. And typically when one's going up, the other's going down, and you're kind of adjusting back and forth based on what you want in your image. Do you want a shallow depth of field? Do you want everything in focus? And it's just kind of a balancing game. And you just, as you practice, I would just recommend, if you're new, get a camera, put it in manual, go outside, find a tree, find something with foreground and background, and play around with it, and just see how things are coming out. And that's the best way to learn anyways, is hands-on.
It's totally the best way to learn. And what you're saying, Michael, is literally I'm telling you folks, within half an hour, you're going to figure this out. I'm not kidding. And you think, oh no, all you do is you put it in manual here. So if you look at my camera, so I've got M, that's for manual. Then there's A, S, and P. And just so you know, the A is for aperture priority, the S is for shutter priority, and the P is program mode. Okay, it's everything else. If I put everything else, okay, and so that's how that works. Okay, so if you want to just start there and just play around with aperture and let the camera pick everything, great. The one other thing I am going to tell you is, when I am shooting, one thing that I do let roll in auto. So oftentimes there's two things. There's two things I'll let roll in auto, and I want to hear your thoughts on this, Michael. That is white balance and my my ISO. Now, I don't like to let ISO go auto, but there's a situation where I always do that. I'm going to show you where that comes into play.
Well, as you're doing that, I will say, I don't ever do ISO in auto, so I'd be curious to hear what that situation is for you. But I do white balance, and a lot of people recommend against that. But I find, especially if you're in some sort of fast-paced run and gun situation, that's actually pretty convenient, and usually it gets it pretty close. Now, the thing you want to watch out for is if you're kind of changing things quickly and you get a different look. But I agree with you. I use auto white balance quite a bit.
Jonathan has a great question here. Do you see the question? It's not showing up on mine. But
yeah. You're not seeing it?
No, but I just highlighted it. Low light has been the bane of my life. How do you deal with low light with small aperture other than slow shutter speed? it's ISO is your only other option. That's it, really. But then you're going to introduce grain, Jonathan. So that's
depends
it's
on
a
your
trade-off. But if you got like my Nikon Z6 is native ISO at 100 and 3200. So if I shoot that thing at 3200 ISO, I mean the new cameras are amazing. Yeah, like it does not look that bad. And then there are programs. We're going to do editing on a different stream, but I just want to let you know that you can reduce film grain in, the edit suite afterwards. And there's a program for that called. I just got it and I haven't even used it yet, but people have told me about amazing results they're getting from it. And it's what is that? It's something Studios. I'll have to look it up here, but and you can use Lightroom for that too. I can lower, but you got to watch it because it'll get really creamy and wonky and milky. I mean, you've seen that too, I'm sure, Michael. But I want to show you, like, this is my wildlife camera. So this lens is always on here. But if I'm shooting wildlife, folks, you completely want to utilize auto ISO. The light is shifting too fast. It's shifting too fast. You cannot keep up with it. So just, what and Jonathan mentioned, and low ISO. And so you're just, Jonathan, to kind of answer your question there, you're not going to be able to get away from low ISO if you need a fast shutter speed. You're just not going to get there. I hate to tell you that. I mean, the only thing to do is utilize movement to your advantage, like I did with that water spill, or like people do with the cars on the freeway. You can make some really cool effects with that slow shutter speed at that point with movement by making that happen.
I think what it comes to for Jonathan and really all of us with those kind of things is if you're just not able to get it to work and it's enough of a problem, look into another camera that has better low light, or look into investing into lighting, depending on what your situation is. I know obviously some things you can't use lights for, but sometimes it just comes down to that, your low light performance and purchasing the right lights to help boost, because obviously with photography or video, lighting is super key.
You can totally utilize flash, or you can utilize like LED panel lights, or there's a whole host of things you can do there. But you're either going to have to introduce more light or bump the ISO. Those are your only two options.
Yeah.
So
if you quickly cut to that screen, it's similar to your picture. I think it's a drawing of just looking at aperture a little bit more. Just there's kind of the difference between f2.8, so a low aperture, and then up to f16. You see everything's in focus on the f16, and then you can see the background's blurred out, and that's how you utilize that as a tool. And you're adjusting shutter speed because you're outside here, so everything's going crazy. If you're f2.8 and you're outside where that cactus is, you're probably going to start off with a blown out picture, but then you use your shutters, or you use your shutter speed and aperture in combination with each other. You have your ISO probably 100 right there. But all that to say, you can see the difference there in how you achieve that shallow depth of field versus everything's in focus in that shot. And then let me see here. Sorry. And then here's how aperture can affect the exposure. And you see, it's wide open down there at 2.8, and then 16 and beyond, you're starting to get dark, and just a visual again there for aperture.
Yep. And that too, and I'm gonna pull this up one more time. I'm gonna show you. Let's see, where is it here? Share, and I'm gonna go share screen. I'll show you one other thing here too. Mm-hmm. Okay, so going back to this picture here, if I go to, I want to show you, like, here's the difference. Like, so this shooting wildlife, that is perfect light. And so that's always, so, there's different things you're looking for, because like with this photo, I'm looking to create drama. So I'm actually not working with perfect light because the light is coming in, and there was a lot of editing that went into this photo to bring it back to what my eye saw. Where with wildlife, ideally, or with human subjects, you are looking to just create perfect light on them. And that's so Jonathan, to answer your question, unless you have the great light, you're going to be stuck with having the ISO go up. Now, this was obviously early morning, perfect light. It's beaver swimming in a pond and stuff. But that's the thing with that. So like if you're shooting the Milky Way, now this is where you're dealing with ISOs of 3200 or 4000. And what's interesting about this, though, again, you're dealing with long shutter speed. So if you look at the foreground of this picture right here, okay, you're going to see that this ice has absolutely zero clarity for it, and the water looks like just this froth. That's because the winds were howling at 25 miles an hour, okay? So like the rock out there, here, this looks fine, but even the trees are a little bit, goofy looking. They're not quite as clear as they should be because they're swaying, folks. So again, long exposure, it's just that's what happens. So
you may have already said it, but I missed it. Do you know what your shutter speed was at for this shot here?
On this one, this was a 15-second shutter.
Okay.
So that's what I was at on this one. I cut that shooting star. Isn't that cool?
That's cool. That is really cool.
I love it when I get shooting star in my Milky Way.
That's awesome.
So anyhow, but that's, this would be another example of dealing with that just perfect morning light, almost too intense. It's just, it's amazing, but that's on some tamaracks on a shoreline. So anyhow, but I'll pull this out of the stream. We're going to pop back to, you had something new to put up, right?
See, yeah, just showing kind of another diagram to help explain shutter speed. If you're new to shutter speed, this is a good diagram. So you're at 500 there and everything's in perfect focus. That guy's crisp up there. And then as you move down, you see in the shutter speed, it goes blurrier. So, but it's also letting in more light, and so it's a give and take. But that's just another diagram there to kind of show how shutter speed works.
Again, sometimes you utilize this stuff to your advantage, and so you look at that quarter second, and it kind of does that implied movement, and you've seen that in photos, and it can really create a cool effect.
Right. Yeah, this is why when you take it out of auto, the world of creativity opens up to you. You can do whatever you want now. Like if you want it to be blurry, you can make it blurry. So yeah, exactly. There's a lot going on. So here's another shutter speed. So fast shutter speed, focus. That slow one, blurred.
I remember the first time I was like, I had my long lens and I was shooting at a car. I was like, there was some cars on the freeway, like, how does this work? And it's like 1/3000 shutter speed. I mean, the wheels on the car are still, the rims on the car stop. I find it unbelievable what they can actually pull off.
It's crazy.
It blows my mind.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So, but you can see, to Michael's point, that slow does create a cool effect if you're looking to do that.
Yep.
It creates something really neat. So this is why it's so important to shoot in manual. Again, just go to that M mode, and then, like on my Nikons, they're all, here, I'll pull us out of here just real quick. So, there's an ISO button right here, and then I just use the command dial. Oh, wrong way. This is the ISO button. I just press that and then move the command dial, and then I'll move it. Okay. And then again, if I'm moving shutter speed, it's right here, aperture right here. That's when I'm in manual. So it makes it's just, seriously, it's two wheels and one button. That's it, folks. I'm telling you, it's not that difficult. I just want to encourage you all. It's not that difficult.
It's just playing around with it until that's what I had to do. And again, if I was shooting a wedding tomorrow for the first time and never played with it, I'd still go to auto, but not for the second wedding. I just go play with it, and you'll like we're saying, you'll get it very soon. I was seriously thinking this is so much more complicated than it was, and once I figured it out, man, so much better to be in manual.
Yeah. Oh, I just love it. It changed photography for me. Just going to manual. It's just it's awesome. Absolutely. So
I missed what my wife just said. My wife just said something, and you put it up, and I was like.
Yeah, it said water is really fun to experiment with your shutter speed on. And it is like, if you like those waterfall shots where you got that beautiful water spill, that's how you get it. So yeah, it's just,
speaking of my wife who just popped up there, she does portrait photography. Yes. And I have a picture here that she did. And when we're talking about the exposure triangle, she typically when she's doing portraits of people, so this is just an example here. I think she often has the aperture set pretty low, between 1.8, 2.8, somewhere in there, letting in a lot of light. That hole gets bigger, a lot of light, so you get the shallow depth of field. You see in this one, the plant is a little bit out of focus there, and the goal is to have the focus on your subject.
Shot. That's beautiful.
It is, yeah.
What a cute
Good job, Deborah. Good job.
Yes. Great job.
So she does portrait, and she's often in those lower apertures. But then for me, a lot of my photography is real estate. And so when I'm doing real estate, I want everything in the room to be in focus. My goal is to get it all. So I'm typically setting my aperture at 7.1. Again, it gives it a deeper level of depth of field. So a more narrow depth of field keeps everything in focus. And I have my shutter speed usually at 1/6 of a second. But because my shutter speed's at so I'm taking this picture of this house, shutter speed's at 1/6 of a second. What do you think happens if I'm handheld on that? It's all blurred, right? Because 1/6 of a second, that's going to be, so you need a tripod if you're going to be at 1/6 of a second. That's another thing that we need to keep in mind if in a situation like this.
I should have mentioned that too with my landscape stuff. It's always tripod work, folks. You got to have a tripod. And it's sometimes, a lot of times, you're going to want that shutter release cable so you're not bumping the camera button.
Right.
Smash that like if you're just joining in, folks. Thanks so much. The other thing I want to mention too, though, Michael, you're shooting at 7.1, but you're also on wide angle, because another thing that's really going to change that.
Yes.
If I shoot at 7.1 on this lens, folks, I mean, forget it. 7.1 is that's shallow now. I mean, it's like the portrait you saw
makes a big difference. That makes a big difference with the wide lens for sure.
Makes a huge difference. So if you're shooting wide angle, like this is, this lens here is a 14-20. Okay, that's a wide angle lens. And you use that a lot in landscape or real estate, so you can pull in big scenes. Right. So I'm shooting inside. I get the 7.1 and the 1/6 of a second shutter speed. Now I'm just adjusting my ISO, again, trying to keep it low so I don't introduce too much grain into the photo. But then I step outside to do the outside pictures, and it's everything changes. Then I have to put the f-stop way up to sometimes even 22. Not always that high, but really, like, just depending on your circumstances, everything changes. So let's just keep that in mind. Yeah, because once you go outside, there's so much more light introduced. Right. Now you're going to combat it with the f-stop.
Yeah, so narrow it back down.
You're going to take that aperture, and you're going to just dial that number up as high as you can go, just limit the amount of light that can come in, and you're going to increase the shutter speed. That's how you're going to then make that so it's not too bright. You're still shooting at 100 ISO, and then you got to find other ways to deal with that. So,
right. Yep. So, you want to get into composition?
Yeah, let's get into composition, because you know what, folks, this is the one thing the camera cannot do for you. You can't auto compensate. Compensate, whatever. I said that wrong. You can't auto compose.
That would be something if camera offered that feature.
Some people would need that.
A lot of people could use the auto comp.
Yes, the auto compose feature. All right. So in composition, folks, there's something called the rule of thirds. Okay. And this is why I told my son, who told me how much he loved art but didn't like math. I looked at him and told him that was impossible, because there is no way you can like art and not love math, because art is math. So that's on the rule of thirds, it works, folks. This is how your eye works, and this is what will make things visually appealing. There are times when you break the rules too, though. So
yes, absolutely.
So I'm going to add this back into the stream. Hi, Melissa. Good to see you on there.
This is a rule of thirds here. So you chop the frame into thirds, and you place your points of interest on one of those lines. You see that the subject here, this lighthouse or tower, whatever it is on that cross line there. And typically, correct me. I know you're more of a landscape photographer than I'll ever be, but correct me if I'm wrong. Typically, for landscapes, you want to have the horizon often on the lower third or the upper third, kind of lining it up there. Is that how you shoot when you're doing
oftentimes? But there's a lot of times too where you just break the rules. I'll just add this into the stream. Here, I wanted to split the picture.
Yep.
So, you know, it just
makes sense.
Varies. It really varies. But see, the other thing here with this picture is you're going to see I've got lines leading you down. Mm-hmm. So you're playing the rule of thirds here still. It still works in different ways. You can see I use these leading lines to bring it down. This is about the third line, and now we're hitting an even plane on the trees. That's what makes this visually appealing. If I go to, let me see another one here talking about composition. So if I go here to this barn, okay, the face of the barn is pulling in all the light from this side, so it makes it appealing again. You know, with the beaver, he's moving left or right to left, so he's moving out of the picture, so I'm bringing him out of the picture. Some people, sometimes you'll bring them into the picture, though. You do that either way. You know, if we go back to this one, which was the first one I showed, what you're doing again is you're utilizing this foreground to lead you out into the rest of the picture. Okay, this is composition is everything, folks. I mean, you can have all your settings right, but if the picture is uninteresting, forget it. Okay, it doesn't. Absolutely. I mean, especially if you want to sell your work, I'm telling you, it's all about this composition. And so oftentimes, you know, in like this one here, you can see I'm down low, but this is following, Michael. You can see on these last two. So I'm at the 1/3, leaving the sky up in the 2/3. I go to this one, you know, and again, I'm 2/3 in the foreground, 1/3 in the up. Okay. But there are times you just break the rules. I mean, you go to this prairie barn and I'm splitting it.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm right about in the middle. But
it's good to be able to break the rules. You know the rules, so you can know when to break them as well. So that's absolutely a good point. So yeah, and then if you're shooting a person, obviously this is video here, but you see like if we do the thirds on our screen here, well, it's hard to do it backwards. But anyways, I'm in the I'm right there. I'm lined up with the thirds, right? Yep. But if you're shooting, what you want to do is if I'm looking this way, here's all the space in the frame. You want to leave, in general, again, your rules are there so you can break them, but also their general guidelines. You want to leave the space in the direction that the person's looking as opposed to the space this way. That's another rule of composure.
Yes. Very true. When you're dealing with people looking in, you want that. And to go back to your point, Michael, this is so good because my good friend, he's a CEO of a bank outfit, and he said, you learn the rules like a master so you can break them like an artist.
Indeed.
Anyways,
I like it.
I did get this question popped up. Do you use Photoshop or Lightroom? I typically, Ted, use Lightroom, although I do utilize Photoshop as well.
Likewise.
But I use Lightroom more. Okay, and I found Lightroom to be wonderful. And we do have, you can go back, we've got a series called The Edit. Those videos will be coming up over time, and also The Shot, and we show some of the editing techniques that I utilize for that, or that Michael utilizes for his stuff. So I want you to know, I use both, but like, and I'm going to just add this back in real quick. I want to show you something. So to that question, a lot of times what you're going to do, I'm hitting the wrong one here. This. So if I go back to this picture, I'm going to pull the comment out so you can see a little bit better. What I'm doing is pulling from two images, one exposed for the sky and one exposed for the foreground. Your camera will not resolve that kind of difference, folks. It can't. It's not your eye. That's why you look at photos and you go, oh, my camera doesn't do that. No camera does that. That's where you're asking the question there, Ted, and thanks for asking that about Photoshop or Lightroom. And we will do another live stream on editing, but I am pulling this color back out because otherwise it would be all black if you were going to see this. So I'm trying to get it back to what my eye saw, which a camera can't resolve. So that's what you're doing there, okay? So anyways, just to share that with you. Please subscribe if you're not subscribed to the channel. I want to encourage you. We're almost at our 1,000 subscribers. It's a big goal for Michael and I. We're having a lot of fun with this. We hope you're enjoying it too. I love photography, and I love videography and all of it. And when you go out on a night like this, and you fall through the ice twice, because I did while shooting this, and the wind's whipping and it's nasty cold, folks. My hands are freezing, but you get something like this. And look here, I don't know how much you folks know about the Milky Way Nebula, but I'm going to go right over here. This right here is the head of the horse. This is the foreleg bent. This is the next leg, and then you got the legs back here and stuff. This is called the prancing horse of the Milky Way Nebula. And when you can take a picture and you can experience that and pull that out, it's amazing. And Deborah's right. She did another. Lightroom is great for batch editing, especially if you've got the same light and it's hitting the same areas. You can batch edit in Lightroom. You can literally just pick a bunch of photos, apply all the same settings to them, and done. So anyhow, we got to share that.
Yeah.
There we go.
So one last point.
I love your studio look.
Oh,
your
thank
lighting.
you. Appreciate it. I'm lighting it.
Everything. I love it. Mine's so.
Well, thank you.
So bland here with my just computer, but you got a much better setup going on.
Oh well. Thanks.
There we're back.
Did I cut out?
What was that, Michael?
Did I cut out there for a second?
I think I'm having like a connectivity issue here.
Oh, yes, sir.
This is my off-the-grid living, folks. All right. Michael, you back?
Yes. Are you hearing me?
Yes, I can now. See, this is my off-grid living. See, this is the thing. I mean, it's pretty good. It's pretty stable internet, really, but it's off the grid.
Yeah. No, that's all right. I have one last point for the rule of thirds. If you were going to be shooting, if this was a photo or a video, and I was the subject and I wanted to, be looking into the lens, whether it's for a photo or like an interview or something, anytime, not, again, general rule that can be broken. If they're looking into the lens, I usually center them in the frame. So that would be the time where I'm not off to one of the thirds, but put dead center. And obviously I would mess with the background a little bit to have it all play out. But that's where I'd put them in the center. I want to add that before we move on from there.
This Melissa asked a question. I just wanted to get that up there real quick. But what's better, to take the pic in the settings you want, or do you take the picture and then set the settings? All the time, Melissa, I'm going to try and get the settings where I want them to in camera to reduce editing. The more you can do to get that right out of camera, the happier you're going to be. And again, but the thing that's going to change so much, Melissa, is when you look at like this, I'm going to add this back in the stream. When you look at this, I can set that up. I've got perfect golden hour light and everything's just great. I hardly did any editing to this, just a little bit of correction with a couple things. But sometimes you do a little sharpening and some different things. But I mean, but when you're shooting, something like here we go, this one. Again, there's so much difference between the highlights and shadows. You have to edit. You have to pull that back because the camera can't resolve it. So great question. Thanks for asking.
Mm-hmm. So when it comes to composure, we have the rule of thirds. We have depth, which we already talked about when we were talking about shallow depth of field, but that's part of composure as well. Another thing we have is leading lines, which you kind of have one over your head there with that picture. Kind of see how that picture is pointing at Neil's head? That line from the picture is behind him. It's saying, hey, look at Neil. Look at his face there. It's all putting the attention onto Neil. Yeah, there you go. That's an example of a leading line. And what you want to do is when you're out shooting, you want to be looking for lines that lead to your subject. So I have an example here, Neil, if you could throw that up there. You see with this girl here in the subway, you notice how all the lines are kind of going right toward her. It leads your eye. It's kind of like the rock that you were talking about in your shot. Everything is saying, it's telling your eye where to look. So it's another big part of composure is utilizing not just the subject that you're working with, but what's behind the subject. What kind of lines can you use that are already naturally in whatever atmosphere you're in to guide the eye where you want it to go.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And that, to your point, that goes right back to this rock line leads you right out to the island. And so that's just, but this is
Yes.
perfect. I like this example that you have here.
And another thing you have
composition though, folks, I mean, this is, I talk with photographer friends and we joke about it because they keep making advancements in camera technology. And I don't know at what point they're going to be able to resolve highlights and shadows that much better, where editing isn't as difficult. But the one thing that they will never be able to do is compose the shot for you.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
That's where the rubber meets the road. Because
right.
it is the difference between an interesting and an uninteresting picture. So something that, like for me, something that will sell and something that won't sell.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these pictures on here that I showed you, these pictures, the Tamaracks are new for me. But these top 3 pictures, they sell at every single show I do. Mm-hmm. Every single show. And I knew when I got them, they were winners, because it was, I mean, first off, it's these conditions that are so spectacular. Okay. And who doesn't like the Milky Way? But I did bring these, the first show I brought these to, I sold them to as well. Those are new for me. So we'll see if those keep moving. So, but I just bring that up because it is, that composition will drive, especially if you're trying to make something out of this. And there's a lot of ways you can make money with photography and videography. Michael and I do projects for companies together. Thank you, Ada. But there's a lot of ways you can do it. Like I do art shows with my photography. You can sell stock photography. There's just so many things you can do, but you've got to have stuff that's interesting or you won't get paid for it. And it's really not that, I mean, just utilizing those rules of thirds, leading lines, and understanding a little bit of editing. I believe in you people. I do. I know you can do this if you want to. But even like if for those that want to look at street photography or even photographers, is to see the world differently and to see it well, okay? So that you can give other people a sense of your vision and pull them into that scene, okay? One of the most powerful images I ever saw came out of last year with the riots in Minneapolis, and it was a car, and it led you right into the rest of the picture. The scene looked like Mogadishu but without that picture, it just you never got the full sense. And then when you saw that picture, you're like, holy cats, okay? That's what a good picture will do. So if you're looking at doing photojournalism, if you're looking at doing street photography, no matter what you're doing, okay, learning these basics are going to set you light years ahead of other people. So
yeah, I think just kind of summarizing the whole thing with the rule of thirds, the depth, the leading lines, you also want to have a dominant subject. So you want, basically the goal is to have a subject and make it easy for people to know what the subject is. You don't want to wonder, am I supposed to look at this, or am I supposed to, what is the goal of the picture? If the person's trying to figure it out, it subtly, subconsciously leaves them confused, and that's not the piece they're going to buy. But if it's like magnificent, for you, a landscape, and here's the subject, the tree or the Milky Way or whatever it is, and the lines are pointing, everything's telling you where to look. It has that dominant subject, and everything's pointing to it. There's no confusion, and that's the goal of a picture, to give someone a clear vision into what you see in that moment. And then I would say personally, the last thing, you can have all the things we just talked about perfect, but if you don't have focus, if your focus is off, it's all ruined. Right? So,
there is that. No, that's a big one.
You have to get that one right for it to all work out. But
yes. Yeah. And I don't know, do you use manual focus a lot, Michael, or are you pretty much just auto? Or
it really depends on the scenario. If I'm run and gun and I'm, with film, I think with photography, like real estate photography, I'm doing wide, and I'm doing 7.1, and I'm doing autofocus. But if I'm filming, I'll typically do autofocus if something's moving around and I'm on a gimbal. I'm not going to try to do that. I'm not going to try to do manual focus right then. But if it's an interview and it's not super shallow depth of field, then I'll sometimes jump into manual for that. How about you?
Well, so I use, I mean, a couple things. When I'm filming, and so we're going to do a separate live stream on video settings and videography. But when I'm filming, I do manual a lot, especially on my 70 to 200 lens, and I'm trying to do like rack focusing because it's such a sweet effect. You know, where you just pull the focus off the person onto the other, and that's just amazing. I love it. But and there are times actually when I'm shooting wildlife where I have to go manual, or the focus will pick up the wrong thing. So, but it's hard. It is a hard game playing manual focus on fast moving animals. So if you can use autofocus and your autofocus is good, and Nikon has a really fantastic autofocus system on their D500, the 7500's got a really good autofocus system. So they're great wildlife cameras. They're also crop sensor cameras. So they give you a little bit more, I guess, objective. They give you more length. They don't, and they do. And I'm not going to get into that whole argument. Everybody likes to argue about that. I think it's silly. The bottom line,
it gives you more punch, more zoom. I mean, practically speaking, it gives you more.
Practically speaking, it gives you more zoom. So we're just going to talk practically here. So yeah, but no, you've got to have that focus pulled, and it's got to be sharp. And one thing that you will learn, especially with the really high megapixel cameras like my 850, I had to autofocus fine tune that camera because the autofocus a lot of times with those, there's so much information there, folks, and you've really got to pull that focus perfect. That is the one thing that you can either bring your lenses into somebody with your camera body and have them do that, but again, this is when you're dealing with the higher megapixel cameras. And then like the 850 on 20 megapixels, I really haven't seen that as much. So anyhow, but yeah,
go ahead.
I don't know where I was going, Michael. You go.
I was going to go with, do you want to talk about camera brands for a second? I don't have a whole lot to say on this, but we can get into camera brands. So we're not very brand loyal
Nikon,
here.
But I started with Nikon.
Yeah.
You know, if I had started with Canon, I'd probably still be shooting Canon today. I would have learned that camera and I would have gone with it. I did almost dump Nikon for Canon at one time until they came out with the D850.
Yep.
I was going to dump it because Canon was so far ahead and they actually had more megapixels. I wanted to be able to print bigger. And then finally Nikon came out with that 850, which is, it's my favorite camera still, folks. I mean, when I'm shooting landscapes and whatnot, it's like 50 megapixels. I can print these images so big, it's ridiculous. The dynamic range is just your ability to see the shadows and the highlights at the same time. Well, it's just an awesome camera, okay? But again, I mean, I shot some of the first pictures I took with a D40, which was a 6 megapixel camera, and it was phenomenal. Great image sensor. I still have photos I sell that I took on that camera years ago. It's a great little camera. So I just don't want you to get too hung up on needing the best, because you know what you do? You start with what you've got. We did a video on that.
We did. I think we did.
So
yeah, go check it out. Start with what you have. That's really key. Because if you're trying to do it as a business, my experience is I've started pretty basic, and as my work grew, so did my ability to get different gear. And it kind of works itself out just as it should. And, you know, as you're learning more, you know, maybe you're not quite ready for the next model up yet. And once you're ready, you'll have the funds to get there. I'll show you how brand loyal I am. Last wedding we shot a couple months ago, I had 2 Sonys, a Panasonic, and a Canon. That's how brand loyal I'm, all for my 4 cameras for the wedding. So not very brand loyal. I started off with the Canon. I showed you the Canon 80D here. Didn't have enough low light features, so I went with Sony. I use a Panasonic for other things. I think you're going to be, with any modern camera, you're going to be okay. If you go back 10 years, look at what we had then. I mean, we're light years. The worst camera now is like way beyond that. The iPhone is beyond that. So you're going to be just fine with whatever you have. I would say if you're primarily photography, I would go with a Nikon, Sony, or Canon. I would not really recommend the Panasonic quite as much for primarily photographers. But the Panasonic is a really good option for a lot of videographers, though. So it just depends on what you're trying to do. But yeah, I agree with you, Neil. Don't get too hung up on the brand and how expensive a thing you're starting with. Learn the basics that we're talking about: composition, the exposure triangle. You can do that on any model, and that's going to get you further than whatever brand you have, anyways.
Just make sure you can swap out lenses.
Yes, and I think actually earlier we had someone, sorry, I forgot what the name was on it, but someone asked a question about what that actually entails, swapping out the lenses, and why is that important. So, it gives you a wide variety of, like we were talking about earlier, for that real estate one, I was on a wide angle, so I can show the whole room, or if I can get up close and, like I think it's 70 to 100 millimeter lenses are where the human face looks most natural. So if you're a portrait photographer, you're going to want to be on a 70 to 100 millimeter. So my wife uses an 85 when she's doing portrait photography. But if I had to use that 85 all the time, I'd be going to do a real estate shoot, and I would not be able. I'd be able to get the couch in the photo and nothing else. You know. So that's the importance of being able to. It's how wide your shot can be, how narrow, but also the distortion. If I try to do a portrait picture of you, Neil, there with a wide angle up close, your face will look distorted. So there's a lot of different, different things you can get out of different lenses, different looks and feels and widths.
Yeah, this is a 70-200 lens, folks. It stays on this camera. I rarely ever take it off. I use it all the time, both for videography and photography. It's the perfect, because like Michael was saying, that 70-100, that is the focal length. And so I'm using this all the time. It's an f2.8 lens. I love it. I bought it used. You don't have to buy all your equipment new. I bought a lot of used here over the years, and I'm very, very happy with it. CA Human, you asked if I have a website for selling my photos. No. And I will get one up here eventually. I keep saying that, but it's show season right now, and I do so well at the shows in terms of selling that the website is just taking a back seat right now. But eventually I'll get it done. There's lots of different ways to sell your stuff, and I really like meeting the people. And the thing I like about doing art shows is I put it all back in the trailer and it's done, right? Like, I don't have to touch it anymore, and I like my freedom. I like my free time. So, but I will get something up. I'll do it. Maybe I'll do a Facebook page. No, I won't. Anyways, I'll do something though. But I'll try and get a website up. I'll maybe if I hang myself by the tongue and say I'll get it up in the next month, I'll make it happen, because I'll get somebody just to do it or something. I don't know.
Are you doing that? Are you making that statement now? If you're going to have it up in a month?
I don't want to do it, because if I fail, I feel like such a heel. I will try to get it done in the next month. Okay. I'd love to come to Pennsylvania. Carol, I love Gettysburg. I've been there. It is absolutely gorgeous. I'd love to go shoot pictures out there a little bit more. And thanks, Unspecified B. But Pennsylvania is a gorgeous state. Got a lot of great barns, and I love barn photography. So that would be fun. So, but yeah, don't get shot, Michael. Did you see that was the opening comment for our thing?
Oh, was it? Yeah.
Yeah, don't get me shot.
I think we've been overplaying that a little bit, but you do love your barns, I will say.
I do love my barns. Yeah. Hey, folks who are on, where are you from? I mean, Carol, you're from Pennsylvania. I'm assuming CA Human is from California, Michael's territory.
Yeah.
Big state though.
Yeah.
So Michael, you're down around.
I'm waiting for you to come back.
What is it? Like, not. There, I'm back.
Okay. It was choppy. Sorry. I didn't really catch what you said there. I'm about an hour north of, I'm about an hour and a half to 2 hours north of LA. I don't know if you're asking that or not.
What area are you from down there?
I am from an hour and a half or 2 hours north of LA. Are you talking to me anymore?
Okay.
Yeah, it's a little choppy.
Yeah, it was a little choppy. Sorry, folks. Off the grid. Just remember, off the grid.
Off the grid.
So next time I'll have Michael run the stream so that it, I can just be choppy out in no man's land, but everything else will run fine. Phone camera. Thank you for asking the question, CA Human. We should have totally talked about that just a little bit. We will right now. Virginia Beach. Look at that. We got folks from Virginia Beach. Nice. So, CA Human, are you from California? Because I'm guessing that's where you're from. Is there any help on cell phone? Well, the composition is going to be one of the biggest things on cell phones. Okay, composition, the leading lines, and the rule of thirds. Utilize that. The other thing is, depending upon what Kentucky and North Carolina, but depending upon what cell phone you have, you can get raw apps for the cameras on there. They're actually pretty good cameras. They just suck in low light. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's really what it amounts to. But actually, they're pretty good as cameras go.
They're way better than they used to be. I mean, they're really doing good with those cameras. Virginia Beach, hey, in Virginia Beach, do you guys still have those signs that say no cussing? Like they have the cuss words, like the $sign exclamation point with an X over it. That's what I saw when I was there. I thought it was because of like Pat Robertson or something. I don't know.
Virginia, I don't know. That's a good question. Yeah,
we'll specified. It was like 2009.
But well, and then the other thing with cell phones is they work fantastic for by the boardwalk. He says
those are great.
The A7C. Do you see the question there, Michael? What do you think about
you're chopping up again, but I am honestly, I am not super familiar with the A7C. I can't really speak on it too much. I would assume that if it's similar to the A7 III and all the other Sony models that are within that realm, I really love them. I love my A7 III. I know the one that's released recently is the A7S III, and that's getting great ratings. And a lot of times it really comes down to what your goal is with them. But if you're looking, like for me, I do primarily video, but then also some photography. My wife does photography on the Sony A7 III. She loves it. So, my hunch would be that it would be something that I would like, but don't want to speak on it too much since I don't know a whole lot about that model.
Okay. CA Humans down in Florida. I thought for sure that sounded like a Californian, with CA. So, yeah, cool. Well, folks, thanks so much. I guess anything else on the cell phone you wanted to add, Michael? I would say try and get a raw converter so you can actually edit the photos. And then just remember the rule of thirds. But they're phenomenal for video, and some of the settings on the video features on a cell phone, and we'll cover that when we do the video live stream. We'll get that done probably a couple weeks out, or maybe 1 week. We'll see here.
And if you guys have like any specific topics that you would like us to go over, let us know. Hit us up. We want your feedback. We want to give you something that's valuable to you. So. Always feel free to do that, and we'll do more live streams like Neil was saying, and we can cater them to, if enough people are asking about a certain thing, we'll for sure try to cover that.
Yeah, just feel free as this live stream ends to add some comments below. We'll catalog those comments and go from there. But I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight on our inaugural tag team and live stream here on Fearless Photography, guys. You've been wonderful to stick through with us through all this, and thank you for all the kind comments. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe and smash that like button, and share this with anybody you think would benefit from it. So, just thank you so much, and we'll see you next time on Fearless Photography.
All right, see you guys.